mess with 23 years.
I'm Tom. I'm an addict. I don't know. Grateful to be here. I feel like a celebrity tonight. Everybody treat me real nice. Appreciate that. Gave me a T-shirt, dinner, and got a really nice ring from David. It's really a good thing. I'm honored to be here, to be anywhere. Can you hear me? Okay. Here we go. Now we go. I had an uncle. He was just drunk all the time. He owned a liquor store, and he'd come home after drinking all day, and he'd step out of the car, and he'd go, "Now we go." And then he'd fall right on his face, man. I'm a lot like him. A lot like him. I'm Icelandic, and he was a drunken Icelander and a gambler and incest and overeater, and I think I overshot the mark myself. I got all of it. Well, I just talked to Jack White. I told him they were taping this so I'd get his name on the tape. And he had called me the other day, and I said, "Jesus, Jack, I got to speak up there." And he goes, "Well, yeah, I know. I told him to ask you." And I said, "Well, he said, there was other people." He goes, "You ain't the best speaker there is." And I said, "Well, yeah?" And he said, No, man, you're not the best. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. You're good. You're good. But you ain't the best." It kind of humbling, kind of brought me down where I need to be, Grateful, really grateful to be here. I just talked to my ex-wife, too, before I came up here. And she made me cry. We got clean together, and we're not together now, but we still share a lot with each other. And we went through the war together for 10 years, loaded, and then we were clean almost 15 years together when we separated. And she told me, she says, "You never talk about your struggle to get clean, how hard it was to get clean." And so I think I'll talk about that a little bit. Of course, I was a good kid. I didn't, coming from the addict home, everybody was an addict, both sides of the family, except for Grandma. We wondered what was wrong with Grandma. She was nuttier than the rest of us. And, so I didn't want to be like that. So I got real involved in school and sports, and I was a good kid and got good grades, and I, made my bed, and I was everything. I tried to be perfect, I guess, the firstborn male. And so it didn't really work, and I didn't really fit. That wasn't me, really. Good guy. I didn't know it. I hadn't gotten into too much trouble, and I was spoiled, and that's not a good thing. And finally, one day, I used to hang out in the bowling alley and shoot some pool, and somebody said, "Why don't you come down to the pool hall?" I said, "All right." So I went down to the pool hall, and my life changed. I met the beautiful people there, guys like John, So you bunked, probably. All day and then come back for more. And I had never used, and so I took a drink, then I smoked a joint, I smoked a cigarette, had some sex, took some speed, all in 2 weeks. I was running, man, and I never stopped. I was wondering, why didn't I do this before? Why doesn't everybody do it? It just worked for me so well, it seemed. And so I was off and running, and I do everything all the way. And so I within 3 years of my first use, good kid, quit going to school, didn't care anymore, just went the other way, man. And within 3 years, I was standing on the Selwood Bridge in Portland, and I'd taken a bunch of LSD, and I was going to jump off the bridge. 3 years, man, I'd been using. 3 years, I'd already known the desperation of the disease of addiction, man. Terrible desperation. I'd done some bad stuff already. I was dodging the draft, There was a whole bunch of felonies going to come down on me any day now, and I was going to jump. And if I'd have known what was coming, I probably should have jumped. I might have been better off. But I didn't, and it came down, and I got arrested, and I was in Rocky Butte jail with 22 felonies, 20 which I was guilty of. And you know how they always throw an extra few in there. I was 19 years old, and I was getting an education. Not the kind you want to get. Learning shit from convicts and stuff. And I'd ask them convicts, what do you think's going to happen to me? They go, first time, geez, you probably only get 7.5 years. You know, I really should ask my lawyer. And what happened was 18 of those counts were for unarmed robbery, purse snatch. I stole the old lady's purses. Man, I was on the run, you know, and this guy jumped out of the car one day, grabbed a purse, jumped in the car, and said, go. I didn't know he was going to do it. And there was $300 in there, and I took half the money. And then he says, let's go do it again. I said, I'm never going to do that. He goes, why not, man? You're already implicated. You took the money. I can't blame him. I did it again. Total 18 times. And it haunted me for the rest of my life. Still does some days. So, I don't know what happened. You know, a guy came to see me in jail, and he offered me a deal to go in the Army, Vietnam. And my hair was so pretty, I just didn't want to get it cut. It was long. It took me a long time to grow it like that. And I was afraid, too, and I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to boot camp. I didn't want to have to do anything. So I thought I'd be, real cool and say, I'll stay in jail. And so, you know how it works out. God was there for me then, and it worked out, and I don't know. First time, I got probation. And so I used for 15 more years after that. I didn't have to go in the Army. You know, you always get lucky. You know, I've skated my whole life. It's a miracle I'm up here. I can't believe I'm up here. Dinosaur. The only thing dinosaur about me is, I can't see without my glasses, and my teeth aren't all mine. And Earl and I were talking about all our illnesses over there. Now there's a dinosaur. So in those 15 years, I again found the pain of the disease of addiction in my life and ruined a lot of other people's lives with it. My family, I can remember the look in my mother's eye, and people go, why'd you do that again? And I don't know. And my dad bailing me out or coming to the hospital and getting me, and all that quiet desperation, where you're waiting for something to happen, or you give your money to some stranger and you're waiting 4 hours for him to come back, and he don't come back. Just hanging out in some tavern or something, just existing, Nobody talked about it, but it's quiet desperation. And if I continue, I die a miserable, lonely death, man. That's what it is. That's what happens to people like me. And so it kept getting worse, and it kept getting worse, and I don't know. I started getting in more trouble and sent to, meetings. 1977, I had 2 drunk drivings, 2 hit and runs, an attempt to elude in a week. It wasn't really an unusual week, just that I got caught. And it was Thanksgiving, of course, always them holidays. And I ended up being sent to 10 AA meetings. I thought, Jesus, 10? That's quite a few. It's pretty harsh. So I went to 4 of them. I went to the first one, and the guy was up at the podium. He was talking about drugs. He was looking right at me. I must have said I was new, and I remember thinking, I'm glad I'm not like any of them, Glad they have a place to go. So I think I continued then for 5 more years and got into some more trouble, went to treatment in 79, went to my first NA meeting in treatment, and they were talking about total abstinence. And I thought, what? Why? Don't use nothing? And it really kind of freaked me out. So I wasn't quite ready, obviously, so I used for 5 more years. And that, I think, is what she was talking about, the pain of trying to get clean and not getting clean, wanting to get clean, not being able to, maybe not being willing to, but just couldn't, wouldn't, didn't, stop using this drug, stop using that drug, just kept just kept the disease going. And I was going to all kinds of meetings, AA, CA, NA, AV. I was at an Alcoholics Victorious meeting one night, and it's a Christian-based group. I'm trying anything, man. And one of the guys says to me one night, it was December 30th, actually, 1984, and I got to the point where I wouldn't use all day because I was going to a meeting, and I'd get loaded on the way home from the meeting. I just couldn't not do that. And this night, my wife smoked a joint on the way to the meeting, drank a little Drambuie, I think it was, and we went to the meeting, and the guy said to me, he says, hey, you've never tried not doing anything. He says, why don't you try not using anything for 60 days? And I thought, wow, 60 sounded so much better than 90, I said, I'll do it. And the wife said, I'll do it too. And I thought, whoa. And both of us are still clean, some 23 years later, and change, so. And the story really, I'm not a big speaker, but I'm a storyteller, and the story is about love. That's what it's all about. I feel so much loved up here in Washington by you people, and that's when the story began. Well, the first night wasn't really too loving. I climbed a tree and was yelling and trying to trim the tree and cut my hair. I was mad. I didn't sleep. I was giving up. I was giving it up, and I knew I was gonna stop this time, and so it wasn't pretty for a long time. In fact, for the first 2 years of my recovery, I was full of shit, really, full of myself. And I remember the first time I heard Brenda speak, I had 2 years, and it was down in Eugene, Friday night speaker. And it was the best I'd ever heard. And also right around, on my 2-year birthday, Jackie over there, my sponsor, he came up to me and said, man, you got 2 years? And I thought, man, now I am somebody. Jackie knows who I am, And, but, quiet as it's kept, them old-timers, they watch you anyway. They watch you. They know. And so at 2 years clean, I was full of myself. And I was so self-centered that my sponsor at the time put me on 30 days silence. I was like, huh? Well, I'll do it if you will. So he said, you can go to birthday meetings, and if they call on you, say something nice about that guy and shut up. And so I was like, they'd call me, and I'd go, no, I'm on silence, like I was cool, still. But I'll tell you what, at 2 years of not using, I finally found some recovery. It took me 2 years to get real, to get honest, to quit embellishing all my stories. I mean, I'd lived out there in that desperation and loneliness, and my stories are all true and ugly and bad, man. And the $15 TV with the coat hanger and, the pliers, and watching Perry Mason every day, Like, I didn't get up in time to go look for a job, so I'll go after Perry. And I really got to change my life, man. I can't live like this anymore. I'm going to do it. I got to do it. I can do it. Okay, as soon as Perry's over, and I don't know how old some of you are, but at 1 o'clock, the 1 o'clock movie would come on, and the theme song from that thing would come on, and it would paralyze me, man. I couldn't move. I'd sit there and watch that 1 o'clock movie, man. 2 more hours. And now, it's too late to get a job, and just keep getting loaded, man. So I know what it's like to be out there, to live that life. I remember one year, I lived on $33 a week unemployment, for a summer. And I thought I was living good, man. I thought I was cool. Owed everybody, hustling and, dealing and stuff. And then there was another summer, well, not a whole lot of time, but I slept under a tree 4, with 1, 2, 3, fourth tree down. That was me with a sleeping bag, a can of beans, and a Playboy. You know, I had it made, man. It was good. It was a good life. But I didn't know. I didn't know that I was going to die. And I didn't care. You know, it seemed like every day was Groundhog Day. You know what I mean? You know, in that movie when he just eats all the shit he can because it don't matter because he's going to wake up tomorrow anyway, or he jumps off a building or something. That's the way I was. I lived like there was going to be no tomorrow. And I didn't care. And I got to a place where I lost that ability to feel. I used so much, so often, that I couldn't cry. I couldn't laugh. I was emotionally bankrupt, and I couldn't feel. And I couldn't look at what I was doing. I had to stay loaded to forget what I'd done. And so I know the pain, man. And so once I finally started to feel some recovery, you know, and I'd been chairing meetings and doing service, speaking in the jails. I was just telling Jackie I'll be there Tuesday night with Will, Clackamas County Jail. I guess I could tell a story about that. You know, they busted this tavern. They came in and tried to bust me, and they ended up busting my old lady and another innocent girl. And so I kind of got upset about that. So I'd call the cops up. I'd tell them my full name. And in my opinion, you're all a bunch of motherfucking, you know, and you're all, you know what I mean. And I'd do it from your house, your phone. And one night the guy says, "Man, Tom, you know, you got nothing original. You're not even funny anymore." I go, "Well, geez, Larry, you got the number for the Multnomah County Narcotics Division?" He said, "Yeah." And he gave it to me. I called them. It wasn't much fun anymore, you know. It's like making an obscene phone call and the lady tells you need God. You know, it just kind of takes the fun out of it. Was that you? No, that was me. That was me. So some years go by and I'm clean and I'm going in. I'm actually back then I was going into this jail with the other fellowship and they were screaming for drug addicts and I was on the H&I committee and I became the liaison for the Clackamas County Jail. Also, I remember when I was in there, you know, I'd be cuffed to the floor many times. I was in there, and the cop would come by and he'd bam, bam, he'd hit this steel bench or whatever it was, and the door would open. You know, boom, boom, the door would open. I'd be, oh God, if I could only do that, man. I'll give anything to do that. I got to get out of here. You know, I don't belong here. Anyway, so these years go by. I get on the H&I committee. I've got a couple years clean, and they're screaming for addicts. So I become, you know, and so we set up the meeting, and I'm talking with them. They're talking with me. We finally set up the meeting for Thursday night, 7:30, and I said, "Man, I'll be there tomorrow night." And he goes, "You know what?" He says, "It's sure nice getting a call from you nowadays, not like it used to be." I said, "Jesus, that was you, Larry?" Yeah. That was Larry. So, you see, you can come full circle here. And that night when my sponsor and I did that first, it was our very first contact meeting for Narcotics Anonymous in our area. And we walked out of there, our feet weren't touching the ground, man. I banged that desk, and that door opened for me, man. That door opened for me, just like that. Now, how's that happen? The steps in Narcotics Anonymous. That's it, man. That's what it is. Still going to that jail, and they still let me out. And if I don't keep doing that, I may become an inmate wearing them same funky sandals they all wear in there. So that was at about 2 years. So I thought, well, I got, you know, a little bit giddy then too, and I thought I might get elected to H&I chair. My sponsor kind of laughed, and he said, "Well, if they nominate you and there's 2 seconds, then go for it." And of course, nobody wanted it. I thought it was cool. I'd look good, H&I chair. And, you know, oh my God, it's a lot of work. So I became the H&I chair at a perfect time in our area in Portland when a like I say, they had just started to open up all their jails for us to have contact meetings. So I became the guy that got to go talk to the jails, me, going to all these jails, talking to the guards and all of them, and convincing them that it would be okay to let us come in. And so my sponsor and I went to the first meeting of all of our jail meetings. There's probably been a few more added since. And so, man, it was a good time. We were the jail guys, man. I mean, I loved it. I, of course, got obsessed with it and was going to a jail meeting every week for about 5 years. Too many. Also, at that time, about 2.5 years clean. I'll look at my watch, but it doesn't mean nothing. About that time, my wife and I, for some God knows why reason, well, we know why now, took in these young girls, little criminal drug addicts, just like Brenda, with an attitude. They were just terrible. They were nasty, and cute, yes. Oh, and so sick, and I'd take them to NA meetings every night. Man, I'd have 2 little sick girls with me, sometimes 3. People thought I was a perpetrator, And they hated going, and I loved taking them, man. And I'd talk about anything in those meetings anywhere. And so what had happened was, not only was I carrying the message in the rooms and in the jails, I was doing it in my home, These kids didn't really want recovery. They just didn't want to be in jail. But they'll never forget living with us. Believe me. And I learned about love. And I learned about Narana. And I was able to learn about the disease more and the family disease and have it right in my home and learn to detach and release and love these kids, man, and be a father figure to these girls who none of them had a father in their life. A lot of them, their father was their sexual perpetrator and whatnot, and every one of them had been sexually abused and abused in every other way, pretty much. Every one of them. And over a 5-year period, we took in these girls, and I don't know, I would never do it again. It was insane. It was crisis intervention. I'd chase them down, they'd run, steal our stuff. I'd catch them. It's like looking for deer, It's crazy. But it was about love, see. Our first girl has 20 years clean. 20 years clean. Wow. One of our most precious girls, Vicky, she died a few years ago. She got out of prison, wanted to do one more hit. First hit killed her, and she's gone. She was very special. And some of the girls are still in our life today. I guess just because I won't forget, I'll tie that in, because at about, I guess we were about 8 years clean, and we finally got done with those girls, man. I mean, 5 years of that, we were burnt out. And my sponsor says, how many of them purses did you steal? And I said, 18. He said, well, how many girls live with you? 18. He said, well, did you ever think that you're able to make amends to yourself? Because you couldn't find those ladies and make amends to them. You hurt them bad. And now you're willing to help these young girls, and are you willing to help them for the rest of your life? And I said, yes, I am. He says, well, maybe you can get some relief now. And I thought, wow, man, if I'd have known I was doing that, it wouldn't have worked. I wouldn't have done it. But see, I'd made an 8-step list, and I'd become willing to make amends to them all, and God provided a way for me to get relief for me. Now when I see an old lady, I don't cringe so much anymore. And I'm still working with a lot of women to make amends for women in general for all the trouble I caused. I do that a lot. I'm lucky that way. About that time then, I had about 8 years. My sponsor, who I'd been going to the jails with, who's a man who taught me how to love men and help men, he went out at 9 years. Now, I can tell you now, he used to say, we learn from those who go and we learn from those who stay. And he went, man. And what had happened with him was he'd been abused by his father, and he'd been out on the streets, turning tricks. And he didn't want to talk about that. So when he was in treatment, he was talking about being a tough guy, man. and about going to Vietnam and all jail and stuff. And it wasn't true, man. He'd been living a lie for 9 years, and it killed him. You know, and my life had become an open book to him, to one person, man. Perry was his name, Perry Legrone. And he wasn't doing that with another man. You see, his life hadn't become an open book to one person, and it killed him, man. He was shot and killed. I saw him a few days. I was the last one to see him before he died. You know, he came to tell me goodbye, and I didn't know what he meant. He said he was going home. Well, I guess he went home. And, you know, I mean, I could tell you all about all the people I've loved and cared for all these years that aren't here, man. And it doesn't matter because I keep loving more people. I just don't stop doing that because I've got to, because that allows me to stay here, continuing to show up, go to meetings all the time, do service, do the steps. Work it, baby. So that was a tough one, you know, and that's when I hooked up with Jackie. I guess that's been almost 15 years now. And I don't know, 13, whatever. And then soon after that, we moved and built a new home. And you know, I'd been with this lady a long time, and we were clean together a long time. She finally got tired of me. Just took that long. And we agreed to separate, and that's been about 8 or 9 years. And that was pretty difficult, pretty devastating. You know how that can be. But, you know, stayed clean, man. I just went to different meetings for a while where people didn't know me and the fellowship couldn't talk about it and stuff. And people were mad at her because why would you know, he's such a nice guy. But no one seemed to understand, you know. I was still very selfish, and I was unwilling to give her what she wanted and deserved. And so right away I started working the steps with these guys down in Wilsonville and on Monday night, missed Monday night football to work the steps, man. You know, I worked them hard, and I found my part in that, and I felt really bad because she wasn't asking that much, man, and I wouldn't get, you know, I didn't do it. And of course, you know, life is funny that way. Like I say, her and I talk all the time. We still are in love with each other, and we just don't live in the same house, and we support each other through the tough times. And if you're clean a long time, there's going to be stuff come up, tough stuff, and that was tough. That was tough. And then a few, I don't know, just a little while later, got one of them NA girlfriends after about 2 years, year and a half. And, you know, I wasn't going to do that. But she did chase me down, got me. Yeah. And it was a good thing because I found out I had the cancer, you know. And you know, that was a shock. It was a prostate cancer, and it's like, oh, wow, you know, you're going to do what to me? And so I went ahead with that, and that was good. You know, it was all good. I remember speaking at PNW about that. And anyway, you know, all the time I'm going to meetings, doing service, working the steps, and it's okay. It's just part of the deal, man. I mean, life is this and it's this. You got to accept them both, good or bad. It's just the duality of life, man. It's not always pretty, and so it was okay, you know. So I'm doing good, and you know, same thing. This NA girl had the same complaint as the wife did. Huh? Can you imagine? And you know, I couldn't give her what she needed either. I wouldn't. I didn't, and not that I couldn't. I just wouldn't, you know. And that's okay. And we talk all the time, too. It's still about love. We're good friends. And it's nice to be clean and go through this stuff together. And so then, let's see, there's more, whatever. What happened then? I got TB. That's a rare one. Me and Jimmy K, you know. TB is what he died from. And, of course, everybody knows I'm Dan's sponsor, you know. Don't blame me for him. Dan always says that I'm just like Jimmy K. The newcomer has an easier time getting off heroin than they do getting away from me. And that's kind of an honor. And then I got the TB, and I didn't know what it was, and they couldn't figure it out. And it was this rare form. It was in my lymph nodes, and I got really sick. So sick, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even do anything. And they thought it was lymphoma, and they had me scheduled for some surgery. And I went in, and they took one of these things out, and they came back, said it's not cancer, it's TB. I was never so happy to have TB, you know. And there was a long treatment for that, you know, and it was really hard, and I was really sick, and I didn't realize how long I'd been sick, a few years, and how much it took out of me. And I was just unable to do anything but answer the phone. You know, I couldn't even watch TV. It was that bad. And I'd start talking to one of them sick-ass sponsees. I'm looking at one of them right now. And I'd get that lift, and I'd be okay. Thanks, man. And I'd be all right, you know. I could, share my recovery, and I felt okay. It was the only thing that made me feel good other than sleep, and I slept a lot. So why am I talking? Oh, okay, so I got all depressed. I got all depressed from that. I didn't know it. I didn't realize that I'd been sick for so long. And I had a fever every day for 4 months. It was like, that would wear anybody down. So I didn't realize I was all depressed. And along came this pretty young girl. And she was pretty. And Johnny says, oh, you just want a pretty woman on your arm in a meeting. No, I don't know. Oh, is that you? Anyway, I fell for this girl, man. And I got crazy because she was sick. She had like 16 months. Oh, man. Jackie won't let me even see anybody unless they got 5 years. Anyway, what happened then was, I focused all that on her. I focused that depression and everything on her, and it didn't work out. It was very short-lived. But I was nuts, man. I was nuts. And that's when I need the fellowship the most, man. Not only was I nuts, I was acting nuts. You know, I was dangerously crazy, and what I needed was quantum surrender, you know. And that's what she did for me. Thank God for that girl. I just saw her last week. She's loaded. She lost her car, her house, and her job. She's going to lose her kid and maybe her life. But now, a year later, man, I'm doing really well because of what I did. And what I did was I started working harder at the program. I started exercising. I was walking every day. God, I wish I was doing that now, but, pants are really starting to shrink. I went... And I'd be walking, and I'd think about jumping out in front of a truck. Now, that's 21 years clean, 22 years clean. Crazy, man. And I'm sharing from the podium, talking about it everywhere. Oh, man, at Starbucks, I'd go, how you doing? Oh, this girl, man, By the time they gave me the coffee, they're going, yeah, you're going to be okay now, And... I beat that one to death. And the reason I'm talking about that is that the fellowship and the people in it saved my life. My sponsees would call me every day, man. I leaned on them and Jackie and Brenda. Brenda put me on contracts and stuff. No sex, You can't call that girl, no texting. I'd be on the phone. We were at a convention. I'm on the phone. And she'd come running up and grab my phone. Who you talking to? I'm talking to my sponsor. You want to say hi, That's the kind of love I'm talking about around here, man. Kind of love that'll carry you through the tough times. And you can turn around and do that for other people, man. And because I finally got through that, my life is wonderful because of it. Now, I was willing to do anything. Acupuncture, man, I started doing therapy. I worked a 56-page 4-step, and a nasty one. And... I was willing to do anything, man, and you know how God is. I turned around and there were some spiritual teachers came right into my life and helped me out. Now, I'm not going to walk into any church, synagogue, or any temple or anything unless I'm in pain, man. So I was willing to do anything, and here came some people in my life, man, lived right up a mile away from me, man, that started helping me heal. And help me grow and learn more about love. Because when I was sick, I had one prayer, man. I didn't mind being gone. I didn't mind dying. but I just wanted more time to get closer to God and learn more about love. That was my prayer. So exactly what has happened. All I'm learning about is love. That's all that's been happening here to me. And love is in the book quite a bit here. And, of course, love can be the flow of energy from one person to another. There it is. Love, man. From my heart to yours. I was at the Blues Festival last month. And I saw a girl I used to know from early NA, man. She had 9 years at one time. And she's been out for years now. And she came over, and I said, I love you. And I was kissing her and holding her. And she goes, but I'm drunk. I said, I don't care. I love you. And I said, sit down. And I was there with my new girlfriend, of course. And not that I'm some kind of player, believe me. And she had a foreign exchange student, and that girl didn't speak too much English, and she was watching me with this street-looking lady with no teeth, you know. And I went over, and I was holding her so tight, and I was kissing her and whispering in, and she stunk, too. I mean, you know. But I loved her, and I felt it go from my heart right into hers. And she went limp, and she said, I know. Oh, I love you. Thank you. Now, she's been calling me. She's been going to meetings. I don't know if she's clean, but she's trying again, you know. And that's it there. It's love. That's what I got to give. And here we go. In recovery, we also strive for gratitude. We feel grateful for ongoing God consciousness. Whenever we confront a difficulty that we do not think we can handle, we ask God to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. This is page 101. More will be revealed. The spiritual awakening is an ongoing process. We experience a wider view of reality as we grow spiritually. An opening of our minds to a new spiritual and physical experience is the key to better awareness. As we grow spiritually, we become attuned to our feelings and our purpose in life. Spiritual awareness, purpose. This is all unfolding for me. It's all coming down to making sense. And I'm able to help people now with my pain and sharing about it, you know, and loving people and loving myself. And it's not about, it's self-love, not selfish love. That's it, self-love. By loving ourselves, we become able to truly love others. This is a spiritual awakening that comes as a result of living this program. We find ourselves daring to care and love. And this is a guy who couldn't feel, you know, couldn't cry. Higher mental and emotional functions, such as conscious and the ability to love, were sharply affected by our drug use. Living skills were reduced to the animal level. Our spirit was broken. The capacity to feel human was lost. This seems extreme, but many of us have been in this state. In time, though, through recovery, our dreams come true. We don't mean that we necessarily become rich or famous. However, by realizing the will of our higher power, dreams do come true in recovery. And I'm living a dream, man. I just got back from a 2-day golf tournament. I'm up here being a dinosaur. How's that happen? How do you get here from there, man? It's a miracle. I'm so blessed. I can't even tell you, man, how excited I am to go to the jail next Tuesday night, man. It's the best meeting I go to. It's the best. Last month when I was up there, not only was I crying, they were too. It was one of those times, man, because it is about love. It's about caring, sharing, and giving. Thank you all for looking at me, listening to me, and paying attention. It's time for the dance. Thank you.